Welcome to the Angry Marks Pro Wrestling and Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. My name is Stevie J, and I'm joined by a special guest today, fighting in the Evolve 19 tournament coming up next weekend over WrestleMania weekend, is John Davis, the number 4 seed. John, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks so much for being on the show, and we've got plenty to talk about, including you're currently the FIP heavyweight champion, and as luck would have it, you've drawn the same opponent in the Evolve tournament that you fought to win the FIP title. Kind of an interesting coincidence.
Yeah, it's funny how it works, and it kind of speaks volumes about the talent that's being used in FIP and Evolve and Dragon Gate. Fox had the win over me in the first style. I beat him second, and I got him for the FIP world. So now we're going for the Evolve title, and we've drawn each other again.
Yeah, it just seems that you two are destined to dance. But before we get into that to a little more degree, I want to take our listeners back in time and let them get to know John Davis a little better, because some of them, unfortunately, may not be as familiar with your career as we are here on this show. So give everybody a little background on how you first got into the wrestling business.
Well, I grew up watching it. Else did. There was no real thing that cemented it, I guess. I mean, I grew up, I was always a fan, and it's something that I always wanted to do. And I just didn't know anything about how to get into pro wrestling. And I'm getting a card one day from one of my friends who had been handed a card by just a random promoter that was walking by, said he had a good look. And he gave it to me, and I had some tryouts and whatnot going on, and I missed one. And woke up one morning and found the card, gave the guy a call, and 2 weeks later was in the ring. And pretty strong since. I started with a guy by the name of Chris Turner, and he's been around for a long time in Jacksonville, and he kind of does things his way. Not all that's necessarily the right way, but to each their own. And so worked with him for a little while, then branched off, chance meeting with Dory Funk Jr. and met Dory. Promoter walked over, was like, "You guys have met, cool. You're in the semi-main event," and so. That was kind of weird, because I grew up on the NWA and stuff like that, so I was very aware of who Dory was. And went in there, and Dory was like, I just had this surgery, and I'm going to take it easy. And he still managed to beat the crap out of me for 15 minutes. And after the match, he was like, "Hey, if you ever come out to Ocala, we have a school out there, and we're not sure that you really need training, but if you want to come work out with the guys, we'd love to have you." And then so I started going out there and doing shows with them and just working out with him. And then after that, I felt like I was good to go and had enough, a real good, strong knowledge to start trying to pursue bigger and better things.
Very cool. So you got quite the start there. You went from that to the Funkin' Dojo to being in the Dark City Fight Club. It was quite a journey getting your name out there.
Yes. And it's all different experiences. When you first start out, you're thinking you're going to take over the world, and you're going to light it on fire, and you're going to be the WWE in 2 years because you're better than anybody that's ever done it before, and just because you're learning everything and you're still real hungry about everything. And then you meet people who are actually good. Like when I left the first company that I was with and started traveling the Indies and seeing some of these guys, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna. But I remember the first time I saw Ring of Honor. The first match I ever saw from Ring of Honor was Low Ki and AJ Styles.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's not a good thing to be broken into. It's like. It's like kind of learning how to do a cartwheel and then watching people start just like doing gymnastics, tumbling routines. I was just like, whoa, I'm not ready for this. And then just started traveling and learning. It was like, there's no reason I can't do everything these guys do or be on that level. And that's kind of where I was. I always feel like I need to learn and I can always be better. So that's, each situation I take something away from.
I definitely can say you've done that, because your career has progressed very quickly in just the span of a few years' time. And a lot of people may still be thinking of you as one half of the Dark City Fight Club, but you become a very strong singles wrestler. And yet there's this identity out there from FIP and Ring of Honor that people just really got into DCFC and were chanting it at shows. So how did that partnership with Corey Chavis come about?
Oddly enough, we just happened to have the same color gear on one day. We were approached and we were asked about teaming, and we were like, sure. And they said, you have the same color gear, and it was like we were both wearing our gear under our warm-up or whatever, and pulled the side of my shorts down. I was wearing, I think, blue trunks, and he pulled his shirt up, and he was wearing a blue singlet. All right, come up with a name. We're going to start you at the next FIP show. and it was a real quick phone call. We're both real big Fight Club fans, so I was like, I want to do something with Fight Club, and he was like, Dark City Fight Club. I was like, absolutely, and that was the end of the phone call. 10, 15 seconds, and we just went right into it, and that, I mean, just never looked back. And with that, it was crazy because me and Corey, we'd known each other. We never really worked together. We'd been worked on shows, but we'd never been in the ring together. And I mean, to this day, we've never wrestled against each other. And we had a chemistry, and it started clicking real fast. I mean, real fast. Like, he would call me and say, hey, man, I got an idea for maybe a combination or something. And he would start it, and I would finish it going exactly where he was going. And vice versa. Or I'd get an idea for something, and he's like, I already had that written down. I was getting ready to call you about it. And so it kind of took off. And then, I mean, people started noticing kind of quick. And I was surprised because we're not your normal tag team. You know, you got guys that, you know, the Machine Guns and all the other guys out there that were teaming at the time, you know, Briscoes, the Wolves and everything, and the Kings of Wrestling. And then it's just like, here comes Dark City Fight Club. And we didn't fit that mold, but people took to us.
Yeah, I think that part of it is because you didn't fit the mold. You came in as something different. You came in a little bit thuggish and ruggish. And I think at first you guys were supposed to be intimidating and be thought of as a menace, but the crowd thought you were so different and so into the charisma between the two of you that they started chanting for you even when you were supposed to be the bad guys.
Yeah, you know, and it was weird because, you know, it all started at FIP. And we were feuding with the top tag team there, Black Market, which is Sean Murphy and Joey Machete. And it would be back and forth. You know, they would cheer Joey and boo Corey, cheer me and boo Sean, and it would just go back and forth in the matches, depending on, I guess, you know, what crowd was there. And we went for quite a few months back and forth with each other. But, you know, it kept building and building and building, you know. And that's one of the things I look back on and I'm thankful for because, you know, it's very important that the fans are behind you, either love or hate, and we were able to get that right away.
So how did you enjoy your Ring of Honor experience when you guys brought that from FIP to ROH? What was that like?
You know, I don't want to say it was a shock to our system, because, I mean, everybody had already known Corey. Corey, for the longest, had been out there on the indies, and he'd worked in Ring of Honor before as Rain Man. So a lot of the guys already knew him, and we got there, and the first match we had was, you know, Stenerico, and they were still going strong at the time. And then the next night was Ryder Strong, Eric Stevens, and Brent Albright, and we teamed with Francisco Chiazzo, and that was in Orlando. And that's kind of where everything kind of sunk in. It was weird because we were in a 6-man, but there was a point where Roddy was on the outside with Corey and was running to chop him. And I caught Roddy right as he hit the corner, and I was coming from the other side, and he didn't see me, and I pounced him. And he hits the guardrail, and the little aluminum thing they hang on the guardrails, the zip ties snapped, and the guardrail comes around and, like, claps around his body. And, like, you could hear people's minds being blown, I guess. I wasn't expecting it to go like that, but his body hitting the guardrail from the pounce, like, breaks the guardrail and the aluminum thing that, you know, everybody hits slaps or whatnot. And from there, we were pretty much set.
Yeah, I think that established you guys as killers in Ring of Honor, and that reputation stuck with you during the entire run. Do you have any regrets about it, though, or is there anything you wish you could have done while you were there that you didn't?
The entire time we were there, we only got, I believe, 2 title matches. And one was the Kings of Wrestling, the Briscoes, All Night Express, and then the other one was just the Briscoes. I would have liked to, I don't know how to say it. I would have liked to gotten a little bit more recognition and gotten a little bit more as far as with the top teams. We spent a lot of time killing teams that were younger and new, and I would have liked to have gone in and just kind of tried to make waves right away, as opposed to just kind of, you know, sitting in the boat watching everybody else do it. And I would really have liked to, me and Corey have gotten some singles matches in, because we were the only team that didn't have singles matches everywhere. The Wolves were teaming, and, you know, Eddie was the TV champ, and, you know, Davey was about to get the world title, and it was weird. And, you know, Mark and Jay would always do singles matches, and Claudio and Hero would always do singles matches, and we never did. We had one singles match each, and it was our last night in the company.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. I do think that a little more singles exposure wouldn't have hurt because, like you said, everybody else was doing it, and some of them have gone on to great acclaim to do it. I mean, you talk about the Kings of Wrestling; both of those guys are now in WWE. We see Claudio on TV as Antonio Cesaro, and Chris is in developmental right now as Cassius Ohno. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting career path that so many of those guys you've worked with have gone on to other companies.
Well, and with the tag teams, especially in our time there at Ring of Honor, our tag team division was insane. I mean, every team was solid, and the whole singles match thing is, and I even talked to the office about it. I was like, look, let us do some singles matches. That way, people can identify with us a little bit more, and so they can see that it's not just two guys beating up two other guys. Let us do some matches and go in, and we had a match in Dayton, Ohio. It was Pick Your Poison, I believe, and it was us and the Wolves, and it was a very simple feeling. Is that all four of us went into the match feeling okay, like we got something to prove. We're gonna steal the show here, and we went out there for like 25 minutes and just tore the house down. And after that, we had a really good feeling about everything, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, you're gonna go back to killing younger teams. And I was like, well, all right, whatever you guys want to pay us to do, but that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to prove that we belong. We didn't want to prove that we were just there. We wanted to prove that we belonged there and earned our spots.
So ultimately, what was the dissolution of the team then? And what's the chances we'll ever see like a Dark City Fight Club reunion in Dragon Gate USA or Evolve?
The Dark City Fight Club is still very much a team. We had our thing with Ring of Honor, and it was right around the time of all the cuts. We were along with Aries and Steen and Necro and Eric Stevens. Like, all of us were let go pretty much the same weekend. And me and Corey, being who we are, went out, made a few phone calls, and we're wrestling for the NWA World Tag Team titles a month or two later.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were two-time NWA World Tag Team champions. And that just kind of goes to show, I don't want to say that the ball wasn't dropped with us in Ring of Honor, but it was definitely not handled properly.
Right.
We're still a team, we team up on occasion, but both of us are kind of focused on trying to get some more single stuff in, and for the longest time after Ring of Honor, my thing was I was just tired of everybody looked at Dark City Fight Club as Rain Man, who was Corey, and then his big light skinned partner. And like, there was no identity for me, and before I'd had a talk with Gabe Sapolsky, and he told me, you're coming along pretty good. I'm interested in using you. And then I ended up teaming with Corey. And then after all of that took place, I shot him a phone call, a text message, and I was like, hey, man, I don't know if you heard, but, I'm not working with Ring of Honor anymore. I don't know if you're still interested in trying to bring me in or whatnot. He's like, yep. And this is like in February or something. And he's like, absolutely. He's like, how about you come in for WrestleMania weekend? And this was 2 years ago in Atlanta. And so I started with Dragon Gate USA that weekend. And me and Corey teamed there one time against the DUF. And I don't know why Corey hasn't been back per se, but there's still a very strong chance that you'll see the Dark City Fight Club somewhere soon.
Yeah, no, as it turns out, I actually remember that because I was at that Open the, I'm trying to remember, was it Open the Ultimate Gate or was it, what was the name of that show that weekend? But I was there for, Dragon Gate USA ran multiple shows in Atlanta that weekend, and the first night I went to a Ring of Honor taping, and it was Mercury Rising. That was the name of it, yeah. And I was there for the second night of Dragon Gate USA, and I just remember, even before the Dark City Fight Club came out, I remember Sammy Callahan and Eric Cannon were cutting this promo, and they were cussing and swearing, and I had a friend whose little son was sitting next to me, and I'm like, should I cover his ears? I don't know if he should be hearing the things they're saying.
Yeah, that first promo, I still vividly remember them walking to the ring and just it was just F-bomb but it kind of defined who those guys were, who they are, the way they feel about stuff. And they started cursing and just going in on the mic, and then everybody was kind of looking at each other, like, what the, really? But it's that's the thing, it's pro wrestling, it's a family oriented show. And, I can't think of too many households where somebody in the family isn't cursing, and it's not like they're jumping out and teaching the kids how to cuss. They're just how they talk, and it's more of an expression thing. So, in that aspect, I think it was good. But did it surprise some of the parents and some of the kids there? Absolutely.
Oh, it definitely made an impression. One that I didn't forget for a while, one that you didn't forget being there either. And it made for a very interesting dynamic when you guys had that match with them. But at the same time, it just struck me seeing those two guys team up. It's like I'd been watching Callahan and Cannon on the independent scenes for years. I'd seen Callahan in shows like Ted Petty Invitational, and I'd seen Cannon at 3XW in Des Moines. And it's like, in my mind, I had never pictured those guys teaming up. And I guess it was kind of like you and Corey coming together. It was like two great forces combining one great team.
Yes, absolutely. And Sammy and Cannon make a really, really good team. And it's weird because their styles are different. With me and Corey, I think you can kind of see where we would mesh at. And when you look at Sammy and Eric, like, if you watch them wrestle in singles matches, like, they don't work the same kind of style. And they're both hard hitters and whatnot. But Sammy's a little bit more on the I don't have a sane cell in my entire brain. And Cannon's kind of like, he's kind of like the, all right, well, let's get this over so we can get to the bar, or I'll just bring the bar with me, so it didn't match. And the first time I thought about it, but they got together and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and Sammy's one of those guys that I've seen take the most ridiculous bumps ever on indie shows. The kind that you think you're going to shorten your career by 5 or 10 years by doing the things that you're doing.
Oh yeah. I remember pouncing him and him landing on the back of his head and me not realizing I was like, this match is over with. And we were like 2 minutes in. And he rolled out of the ring and he started moving around. I was like, okay, we're good. And then we went ahead and finished it and it was good.
Yeah, he'll do anything. He's one of those guys that literally will put his body on the line. I saw him at a TPI when he took a big swing from Claudio Castagnoli through about 5 or 6 rows of steel chairs, and I'm thinking, how many concussions did you just get in the course of about 10 seconds? But he still got up and kept wrestling the match.
Yeah, it's weird how that works, because I've taken a couple tumbles in the chairs myself, and they don't hurt as bad when they're sitting still. It's generally when somebody throws or swings them at you. I remember throwing Davey Richards, like, God, he probably went 7 or 8 rows deep, and it was just like this huge mess. And I remember thinking, I was like, all we did was just mess up all these rows of chairs. But I guess it kind of depends on how you land on them. I've seen Drake Younger take some crazy stuff on chairs and just like straight up, like instead of being thrown into them, like he's coming from a high distance down on top of them. I'm like, I don't know how that dude's walk.
Yeah, Drake does some ridiculous stuff too. I've seen him and Quackenbush have some stuff in their match that I thought neither one of them would ever be able to walk again after that. So I got to give credit to both you and to every other independent wrestler out there that you guys put your bodies on the line to a great degree trying to entertain us as fans. And it doesn't matter whether it's like 5 people or 500 people. You always go out there and bust it.
Yeah, that's what we do because we love what we do. It's a job that we take seriously. And I've had a couple injuries here and there, like partially torn MCL, severely sprained ankle. I've had 13 stitches in my head. And Ring of Honor actually destroyed my wrist. I don't know if you remember that. Against it was me and Corey against Steen and we're in Ohio, and Steen dove out of the ring, and somehow his entire body was in the palm of my hand. So when I went down, my left elbow hit the pad, and Steen was about 275 at the time, so he's sitting in the palm of my hand basically from 8 feet up in the air.
Oh,
and,
no.
Yeah, so he hits the dive, and I roll over and grab my wrist. And you see it clear as day on the video. I grab my wrist and roll over, and the first thought in my head is, man, I just broke my arm. I was like, this is not good. But we're almost finished with this match. So I got up and just kept wrestling. And I don't remember the name of the show, but if you ever find it, it's Dark City Fight Club versus Kevin Steen and Jay Briscoe. But after the match, me and Corey are in the ring, and Steen and Briscoe are walking back. And it cuts to Steen's face, and he's laughing. He's got that's the Kevin Steen smile thing going on.
Right.
And you can audio cuts, and you hear me clearly say, I'm pretty sure I just broke my arm. And then it goes right back into the crowd. But it's clear as day. And I remember me having the conversation because Corey had broken 2 toenails in the match, in his boot, and his foot was bleeding.
So nobody got out of that match.
Missed him.
Nobody got out of that match.
That's okay. I'm pretty sure I just broke my arm.
Your audio cut out there a little bit.
Oh, no, not at all.
But yeah, everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was just filling in the blank spot there by saying nobody left unscathed after that match. Everybody had a war wound of some sort.
Yeah, we all left with memory.
I guess that's a way to look at it. You can call them all memories. And memories are going to be what next weekend's all about, because you're going out there and you're going to create some memories, not only with AR Fox, but for the whole weekend.
Absolutely. Fox's history has already been, we've already talked about it a little bit. The Evolve title tournament is very, very important to me because I kind of feel like I spearheaded the movement. I tried talking to him in the office about it. I addressed it publicly in promos, and everything, just nothing. And then, finally had my way, and then we finally got it. So, now they have the title, and now it's time for the tournament. And while I think that everybody in the tournament would be a good representation of Evolve as far as what the champion can be, I think it's my time.
It very well could be too, because I mean you're coming in with a wealth of experience, and you're a guy that I know Gabe Sapolsky wanted you from the start. So you not only are you a top seed, but you got both from the inside and outside. If you're looking at it from the sports entertainment part, you're a guy that's going in there with a great track record, and if you're looking at it from the business stand side, it's all there lined up for you to be a champion.
Absolutely, and also it kind of helps that if you look at the bracket on the other side, I've beaten everybody in it.
Absolutely. I mean, it just comes down to, I look at that tournament and I look at the seeding, and even the number one seed, it's like, okay, Chuck Taylor has an 11-7 record, which is like the best win-loss record overall, but it's only just over 500. And yet I can't take Chuck lightly in any way, because he's also, besides being an entertainer, and he's one of the more colorful guys I've ever seen on the independent scene, he is also a good technical wrestler.
He is, and it's weird. He's like the frat boy. He likes to play, he likes to joke and have a little bit of fun. But when it's game time, his shot's always on.
Mm-hmm. I literally can't explain to some people why Chuck Taylor is so interesting, because it's one of those things you almost have to experience yourself. Like at a TPI show, I actually saw him do an invisible grenade with little children sitting at the ringside, and he'd throw it up in the air and go boom, and all the kids would duck like they actually got hit by a grenade blast.
I had an experience with a grenade. I don't remember what Evolve it was. I believe it might have been 17, and it was me and Chuck Taylor. And if you get a chance, just watch it. I don't want to blow the story, but me and Chuck Taylor wrestled, and he tried the grenade, and what ensued was hilarity, but confused me at the time. But you'll see it when you watch it. But just if you get a chance, watch Chuck Taylor versus John Davis and watch the grenade.
I will be watching for that. I'm working my way through the backlog of Evolve DVDs right now, trying to get caught up before the tournament. But I'm still going to be watching that tournament on iPay-per-view, whether I get caught up or not. I can't. I mean, that card is just so stacked from top to bottom. Besides the tournament, there's no way I could miss.
The show is so strong. It's crazy, and it is such a showcase for everybody that's going to be there. The elimination match just to get your spot in the tournament is going to be nuts. So it's very, very interesting how all this is going to play out. And I don't know that I've been more excited for an entire show as far as top to bottom, as far as how it's going to play out, than I have in this one.
I also think it's kind of interesting how things come full circle in a way, because you got into Ring of Honor and you didn't get everything that you wanted to do there. You got a couple chances, maybe not as much as you would have liked. You can say they dropped the ball or not. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but now it's like Gabe Sapolsky's left Ring of Honor. He's running Dragon Gate USA and Evolve, and it's almost like everything comes back together where it started again.
Absolutely. And, speaking of, we're going to talk about success companies. You have to look at the guy whose brain trust it is, and you look at what Gabe did with Ring of Honor, and you look at what he's doing with Evolve and Dragon Gate. He made a lot of the guys that are stars now, he gave them an opportunity to be stars. It wasn't like they just, they were all already good, but he pieced it all together, and he figured out the concepts, and the early Ring of Honor stuff still holds up today, and the same thing with Evolve and Dragon Gate. And you can watch, and it's funny that Evolve's named Evolve, because when you watch some of these guys when they first came in, and you watch the changes that have been made and little stuff that they've done and how they've matured, you can watch pretty much the whole roster that's been there since day one, or guys that have been there since the first couple shows, watch and see how they've matured as wrestlers and performers and gotten to the point that they're at now. And it's insane.
Oh, yeah, and I'll name one person in particular that I remember was in a fray when I went to a Dragon Gate USA in Chicago, and now is like one of the top guys, and that's Johnny Gargano. If you watch how he's evolved over the last couple of years, he's become one of the top names out there right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Johnny's one of those guys. He's like one of those fun-loving guys. Denim vest, long hair, wore scrunchies. I still don't understand that. Um, but he's completely changed, and he's grown up in front of everybody. Ricochet's another one. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers Ricochet in the baggy pants with the perm, but you get a chance, Google it. It's a fun read and a fun watch.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and it's just amazing to me seeing all this talent come together in one show, and that's a testament to Gabe, but it's also a testament to you because you're going to be part of this huge weekend. But I do want to ask some of the questions from listeners and fans of yours, and they have things they want to know. And one of them is you've got some interesting tattoos, and they want to know which one was the most painful to get.
The most painful overall is is the one on my chest. Felt like the dude was digging a hole. It was, I don't know why it hurt so bad. And when you look at it, like it's pretty easy line art. Like when I drew it out, it was just like, okay, this is what it's going to be. So, the shading was up to him, but I guess he was just heavy handed. I don't know. I mean, it didn't feel like he was trying to put a tattoo on. It kind of felt like I was getting stabbed and he was just like pulling the knife down my chest. And it was a 3.5 hour tattoo. And I was almost done in like an hour in. I was like, this shouldn't hurt this bad.
Now, that isn't the one that looks like scripture, is it?
No, that's the one. The scripture's on my ribs.
Okay. Well, some of our readers, listeners, whatever, they can't tell what that scripture says. So what's the quote?
It's 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 14, and it reads, "But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear what they fear. Do not be frightened." That's an ode to my grandfather, who was very instrumental in getting me into watching pro wrestling in the first place, and was there to see a lot of the early stuff in my career. And he passed in '08, and he was a huge influence in my life. I've never known my biological father, and my mom's had a couple boyfriends here and there, some of them serious or whatnot, but none of them ever had that dad feeling. My grandfather never called me his grandson or John. It was always son, and he always took me under his wing. And he's one of those people, just, he never met a stranger. He always did everything he could to help anybody, no matter what. And there's times when he suffered for stuff. He got robbed trying to help somebody get a ride in the raid one time. But it didn't stop him from doing it and helping somebody else. And he got robbed again trying to help somebody. And that's just who he was. And so when he passed, it was just one of those things that stuck with me.
Very cool. I think that's a great tribute to him. And I got to say, it makes me feel a connection, too, because it's thanks to my grandfather on my dad's side that I'm the wrestling fan I am, because he lived out in the middle of nowhere, and he got a satellite dish. And this is not like DirecTV and Dish today with all the fancy equipment. No, this is one of those big honking that looks like you could own your own TV station satellite dishes. And that was just so he could watch Vern Gagne and the AWA every week.
Yeah, and my grandfather was really into the NWA, and that's kind of what pulled me into it. I wasn't a WWE guy for a long time, and I grew up on the Andersons and Flair and Steamboat and Buzz Sawyer, Terry Taylor, guys like that. And oddly enough, the first time I started watching WWE is I just moved up to Philly from Georgia, and I'm flipping on, and I wasn't familiar with WWF. Like I had no real connection to it at the time. And it was right around the WrestleMania 3 time, I want to say. And Hercules was out there. And then they were doing a thing where they were doing the Full Nelson Challenge. And Billy Jack Haynes came out. And they just started brawling. And I knew who Billy Jack Haynes was. And I was super excited about seeing somebody that I recognized. I was okay, well, I'll give it a try. And then started watching both of them from then.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was more of a WWF and AWA and not as much of an NWA, but I have gone back now as an adult and watched some of the stuff that I missed out on as a kid, and you gotta love, especially the Ric Flair stuff from that era. He was and still is a tremendous performer, but obviously it's, we talk about Flair, it's a little bit of a bad time for him right now because of the passing of his son, so we want to send our condolences out to him.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of meeting Reed back in Ring of Honor. He came in for a little while, and he was working out with some of the guys. And good kid, stand-up dude. It sucks to see him go,
Yeah, and we don't even know what the reasons are right now. That's yet to be determined, but it's unfortunate that so many people do die in the wrestling business. And, I do think that gets overplayed to a certain degree because, it is a high risk sport and people do get injured and things pile up, and it's not all bad. It's like some people are just doing what they want to do for a living, but at the same time, you also wish we could prevent some of these deaths, especially at such a young age like Reed.
Well, people try to demonize what we do, and I've never understood it. People's like, oh, there's this list of over 100 wrestlers that have died. Well, they didn't all die, from heart attacks or drug overdoses or anything like that. There's car wrecks, natural causes. Some of these guys lived a very long and full life,
Well, yeah, and one that I'm sorry to interrupt, but the one that always drives me crazy is when John Tenta shows up on those lists. That dude died of cancer. It had nothing to do with his wrestling career at all.
Well, that's the thing though. People look at it; it's an outside looking in thing, and people always want to say something negative about pro wrestling, and to like going back to the Benoit stuff. Everybody was like, "Oh, it was roid rage." And it's like, have you ever done any research on any of that? Like, when you look at it, you can't. I'm not sure what you guys are, if you're very familiar or if you've ever seen like Bigger, Stronger.
Oh yeah,
or anything like that. But you can't. Yeah, you can't have a roid rage for 3 days. It's a short burst. It's similar to road rage almost. And people try to make that out like it was something. Like that's what it was. Oh, steroids. Nancy Grace was steroids, concussion steroids. Everybody was talking about steroids. And sure, Benoit was in good shape and his testosterone was high, but he was like 5'8", 225 pounds. Of course, your testosterone's going to be high because of the amount of muscle that you're holding. And people try to blow it off to that, and he had his issues, and it was horrible what happened. But again, it goes back to demonizing professional wrestling. Like it became this witch hunt, and then all pro wrestlers were instantly bad guys that had horrible intentions and were unstable, and that's not fair to everybody else. Things happen. It doesn't matter what your profession is. People aren't trying to demonize rock and roll or heavy metal, and look at all the guys that have passed away there. Same thing, like people climbing scaffolds. A lot of people die doing that, but we're not making a bad thing. It's people doing their job, and pro wrestling is a job. And for some reason, we've always seemed to be on the negative spectrum of it from people who don't understand it or don't really care for it.
Right, and no way can Benoit be compared to the rest of the wrestling industry, not just in people who are still working, but in people who have passed on, because there was clearly something dark in that man's head that we will never fully understand, and whether it was concussions that brought it out or not, well, who can say for sure, but I do think that steroids are the minimal factor in what made him what he was.
And I think that, and I'm not at all condoning any actions that he chose to take.
Of course.
But when you go in and you look at his brain and say it was like an 85-year-old man with dementia, and they're putting all this stuff and they're talking about how badly his brain was beaten up. And speaking, you were talking about AWA, Vern Gagne, did a takedown in a home on his roommate or whatever and broke the dude's hip, and the guy ended up dying.
Right.
And Gagne's got dementia. So, you could snap and go to a different place and not even realize that you've done it until it's too late. Because Vern didn't even know what happened. Mm-hmm. And, but we put our bodies at risk, and that does come with results. Some are negative, some are positive. Everybody's body's made up differently. We could all three drink, or both of us could drink the same energy drink and have different effects. You won't crash, and maybe I do. But everybody's body and chemical makeup is different. And Benoit was going through the stuff that he was going through, and people didn't pay attention to it until it was too late. And it's very, very unfortunate that it happens, but that doesn't mean that that's everybody in pro wrestling.
No, I couldn't agree more with that. And I just hope that if it does turn out, if medical science proves that it's the concussions and it was that caused him to snap and become what he was, and we've seen football players get concussions and commit suicide, that maybe, concussions will be the area of focus and less on demonizing wrestling. Like, let's get it to the point where if you get a concussion, maybe you shouldn't be in sports for 6 months. Maybe there'll just be a thing like that.
Well, even if it's just a few, it depends on the grade of the concussion as well. They're doing a lot with Triple H is actually implementing the people that are just brand new into training. They're bringing into FCW. They have to wear helmets when they're taught everything to prevent that, and so they can ensure their own safety.
Right, because they don't know how to bump yet. They don't know how to protect their head.
Correct, and it's very, very important. And they don't. don't make people like they used to. The class of wrestlers today versus the class of wrestlers in the 90s versus the class of wrestlers in the 70s, they're all different. And everybody was brought up and trained a different way. But when you look at what they did in the 70s compared to what they did in the 90s, the guys in the 70s are freaking out because what the guys in the 90s are doing. Oh my God, you guys are doing all this stuff. You're doing suplexes as regular moves, and Harley Race won championships with that. And now the guys in the 90s are like, okay, you're doing 450s halfway into the match, and that was Scorpio's finish. And the sport has to, pardon the pun, but evolve to make it more appealing to everybody as the times change. And so that means that we're putting more on our bodies. But also the guys have a different lifestyle. There's not a whole lot of, going out and partying and various drugs and drinking till the wee hours of the night. There's some guys that are like that, but it's not as constant as it was. And so there's a lot of other factors. If you've bumped your head 1,000 times on the cement and you've been drunk every single night and you've masked pain with it or taken painkillers or whatnot, or you're doing stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, well, that's going to add to the problem as well. And you got to think about your overall physical health. It's going to be bad on your liver. It's going to be bad on your lungs. It's going to be bad on your heart. So that'll add to it. And now the guys may do more in the ring, but it's less when they go outside of the ring. There's a lot of guys now that are into video games and reading, and that's just who they are. And that doesn't mean that we're a softer generation of wrestlers by any means. It's just that we know what we're doing in the ring, and we don't like being sore, so we don't go out and get drunk and destroy hotel rooms and get in bar fights and whatnot to prove that we're tough guys. We don't need to do that. That's not who we are. And I'm not saying that's what they had to do back then, but that kind of stuff was more likely to happen when you have, Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch out there drinking and somebody says something about wrestling. They're just a different breed of dude.
Yeah, you're right. It's not like even the 70s or the 80s, like when John Stossel and Dr. D got in their little scuffle, and it's, everybody doesn't have to prove that wrestling is real anymore. I think the bumps and the injuries are proof enough that what you do is a hard physical toll, and it takes the wear and tear, and it takes somebody that's really committed to going out there and being an entertainer to go out there and do that. I don't think anybody can. I always try to say this, it's like a mixed martial artist, and I love mixed martial arts, and I'm a great follower of the sport, and I'm covering a show next weekend, in fact, Invicta 5 in Kansas City, but it's like this. A mixed martial artist, they train really hard, but they fight once every 3, 4, 6 months. But a wrestler goes out there and does what a mixed martial artist does, like 3 nights a weekend, sometimes every night a week.
Well, and that's another thing. That's a lot of people. A lot of people are like, oh, pro wrestling, it's not that hard, blah blah blah. And I invite them to do it, and also remind them, like, look, you can watch pro football. They get an off season. Pro basketball gets an off season. Hockey, gets an off season. There's no off season in pro wrestling unless you're just like one of those random indie guys that was trained by your buddy and you wear jeans and you wrestle once every 4 months. But if you're serious about it, and there's no off season. It's every single weekend. You're going to wake up and you're going to be sore and your body's going to be bruised, but you go out there and do it because it's your job and it's what you love to do. And no other profession anywhere. You make a movie, you take a month off, or 6 months off, or whatever till the next role comes up. Pro wrestling, you don't do that. It's you do whatever your match is, and then you drop to the next town, and then you start it all over again. And there's no time just to sit down. And if you're sitting down for a long period of time, either you suck or you're hurt.
Absolutely. And on that note, even movies, they have stunt doubles. They have people that come in there and take the bumps for them. And sometimes that ends up being pro wrestlers.
Exactly.
So I think we know you are committed to the craft, and you are going to go out there and put on a show for everybody that's coming. And for everybody that's watching on iPay-per-view too, we want to stress that. You can go to dgusa.tv to find out more. You can go to wwn.live.com and order it. But I do want you to give any other plugs that you want to get in before we wrap it up tonight.
Well, my main thing is if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, I'm pretty boring. I generally only post about wrestling stuff. Every once in a while, you hear something about music or some random thought that pops into my head. But it's John Davis 817. Cover the shows and support indie wrestling. Full Impact Pro, as we talked about earlier, is making a comeback, and there is a rich history with this company. If you're not familiar, Google it. Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Homicide, Jamie Noble, all these guys came through, and all these guys have been an integral part. Tyler Black, who's now Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, who was Jon Moxley, all these guys have been an integral part. and pay attention to independent wrestling, not just FIP, not just Evolve, not just Dragon Gate, but pay attention to Ring of Honor, pay attention to AEW, all these guys out here doing things, PWG, those shows are insane. Watch these guys, because this is the future of the business. If you watch the WWE right now, a lot of these guys you were watching 7 years ago on the indies. And that's where we're going, and we're making it a sport again, and we're taking it back. There's nothing wrong with guys who want to come out and cut their ear or rip their shirt or whatever it's going to be, catchphrases, but that's not what wrestling is right now, and I think it's going to go back. We're due for a boom period, and I think that the guys that we have right now are going to usher it in.
All right, John, you're going to be one of those guys doing it. So everybody follow him on Twitter, John Davis817, and check him out in the Evolve tournament. He's the number 4 seed, but number 1 after this show, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
All right, John, have a tremendous weekend. Enjoy WrestleCon, enjoy Dragon Gate USA and Evolve, and we'll have you back on again sometime in the future, and hopefully you'll be the Evolve champion when you do.
Yes, sir. We can talk about that soon.